We are officially on quarterback decision watch, so it could come at any time, folks. Welcome to the Voice of College Football, Ohio State Buckeyes Live. We're here on a Friday because these guys make it out to practice, and therefore that's a good thing that we get more intel from Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts 247 Sports, Tony Gerdeman, BuckeyeHuddle.com, BuckeyeHuddle.com, Buckeye Weekly is the podcast, and then, of course, College Football Playbook. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing well.
Great.
It just brings into focus for somebody that's worked in the media and still does to a certain extent. I think it from both perspectives because, of course, people in the chat and the fans are just wanting the football and the football decisions to be made. But I'm thinking you guys, again, are held hostage to the decision time and the announcement of such. So we're talking Ohio State quarterback decision. Ryan Day has stated that while there was speculation for much of the offseason that this could drag into the season, that he would like to make an announcement and believes that he will very soon, Steve.
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing is kind of the natural progression of events. I think the last two quarterbacks who took over at Ohio State, Justin Fields and CJ Stroud, I think everybody knew full well what was going to happen. And the timeline is very similar to those last two decisions that happened midway through the camp, about 2 weeks in and 2 weeks before the first game. We are currently 15 days out from the September 2nd season opener at Indiana, which will be seen on our network at CBS. Just a little plug there. So kidding aside, I think this is where it was supposed to be at this point. They're going to have a scrimmage on Saturday. It sounds like it is very close, neck and neck, between Kyle McCord, who has an extra year in the system, and Devin Brown, a redshirt freshman who was lightly used last year, just a couple, maybe 2 or 3 games, whatever it was. And so I think that they're going to get through this scrimmage, assess all the tape, and sit down as a staff. And Coach Day's next scheduled media appearance is Tuesday. And it is entirely possible he could come right out of the gate and fire out and say, this guy is going to be our starting quarterback. And moreover, I think that's what Ryan Day in a perfect world would like to do if he knows who it's going to be, because they want to get that person 70% of the reps going forward, getting ready for Indiana, because it's now game planning time when you're inside 2 weeks to the first game. So I think that is the natural progression of events. Get through Saturday, see where they're at. But I do believe Devin Brown has really shaken this thing up. One parent who attended the scrimmage basically said they're both outstanding and they're both great people. So there's a lot to work with there. And if this team has a downfall, I don't necessarily think it's going to be the quarterback position. I don't know what the downfall would be, possibly the offensive line. But if this team has a downfall, I don't foresee it being the quarterback position.
Yeah, the quarterbacks have performed so well under Ryan Day. I've said it before, it would take a greater leap of faith to expect them to not play well than it would be for them to play well. So I think you just go in expecting whoever wins it to put up good numbers and be a candidate, a serious candidate for all Big Ten. Just going based on every time Ryan Day has named a starting quarterback in the past, we're still not to that point. It's always after the second scrimmage. It was August 19th for Justin Fields. It was August 21st for CJ Stroud. It's, in the days, that's like the first time we talked to Ryan Day after the second scrimmage is when he tells us now, and that could be in the past. It has been, I think in 2019, it was the Monday after. In 2021, I think it was that Saturday after, or it may have been the same day or the day after a weekend scrimmage. So we are scheduled to talk to Ryan Day, I think, on Tuesday. And so maybe it will be then, or maybe, hey, we also talked to the Ohio State offensive coordinator on Monday, but I don't know that he would go ahead and jump the gun on that one. But yeah, I'm expecting it to be Tuesday. Ryan Day certainly does not want to go in to the Indiana game with two quarterbacks, playing two quarterbacks, still trying to figure it out. as he said, he wanted a starting quarterback back in the spring. I don't think he was upset that he didn't have one, because what that could have meant for the transfer portal if he had named a starter back in the spring. But now you need somebody to step forward, and even if both guys are playing starter worthy, you still got to have somebody out there, and that almost does that create a bigger problem if both guys are starter worthy? Because as he said, he wants somebody to just broaden the gap. He wants somebody to take a step forward, and that's the guy that you're going to go with. And if they're both playing okay in camp and nobody's doing that, then that creates an issue.
There is such a surge of support for Devin Brown, and I don't know exactly where it's coming from.
I do.
Okay, I see the big smile there. And before we get to the big smile and what's behind that, because you guys get so much more Ohio State feedback from fans and elsewhere than I do, I've got to kind of weed it through all the Kansas State and Stanford and whomever else comes my way. But I'm seeing and reading all this surge for Devin Brown and having people start up discussions with me. And I think, okay, where's this coming from? Is there a particular media outlet that is pushing, this is the guy, he should be the guy? I do know of one in fact, or is this that there's been enough tape put out there, enough throws from practice that based on the 3 or 4 throws that people have seen, wow, he's the guy? Or it's just, a name gets stale after a period of time. And even though Kyle McCord has really done nothing except for a spring game to show anybody anything to a large degree, that, well, we've been waiting on him for so long that, Devin Brown, now this seems kind of new and it's kind of this phantom analysis that he's got to be better or something. And then there's also the dynamic of the mobility, and there's, I think by some fans' account, that there's an automatic gravitation to the more mobile quarterback, thinking, well, if he's as reasonably close to a good passer, then obviously he brings that dimension. So let's go with the guy that can burn the defense.
Yeah, I think you said it right there in terms of why a lot of Ohio State fans who want Devin Brown want him. It's because he is the more athletic guy, and 2 years of watching CJ Stroud not take advantage of that, I think, has gotten them to the point where they don't want to deal with that anymore. And so they're willing to just go ahead and take the less patient quarterback. So I think they want the more athletic quarterback. There's also the segment where the backup quarterback is always the better choice in terms of it. We even saw it with CJ Stroud the first couple of games in 2021 where people wanted Kyle McCord out there. And so there is some familiarity breeds contempt, and there's more familiarity with Kyle McCord. And so I think that, through no fault of his own, he's kind of some people are already ready to move on. So I think in terms of why a lot of fans who want Devin Brown, it's because of the athleticism more than anything else.
Talking Buckeyes here, as we do each and every week, typically on Wednesday, but we have to move schedules around. These guys make it out for, of course, interviews, news conferences, and practice, and we want them to be able to do that. And, of course, they would, regardless of what I would say. So here we are on Friday, of course, talking Buckeyes and getting ready for a season opener in 2 weeks and 1 day. We'll take your comments and questions, folks. Leave them there in the chat. You ultimately produce the show. And good morning to Sue, the Rod Farva, Mika, and others. So unless you guys have anything on the quarterback position, Steve, anything else on that?
No, again, I'll just reiterate, I think the quarterback is the function of the guys around them. And if the offensive line comes through this hell month of getting battered around by the Ohio State defensive line and comes through it better on the other end, I think that that's going to be a good thing. And I think they'll be ready for whatever they're going to see during the upcoming season. So if they play up to reasonable standards for an Ohio State offensive line and give that quarterback time to flourish, obviously they've got the weapons around them to distribute the football and make great plays. So again, I'm not a believer that they don't have a quarterback. I think they do have at least one quarterback, if not two, that are capable of winning double-digit games for this team this year. So that's kind of my overarching thought about the quarterback position is it's going to work out. And again, to me, the offensive line continues to be, I mean, just, and we can segue into that. We got to talk to Justin Fry and the offensive line, a lot of the mainstays there this week that I think, we call it a question mark. I mean, until they do it in a game against a good opponent, you just don't know what you have. But I think I feel pretty good about it. I'll let, Tony can go into more detail about that moving forward if he wants. But that's kind of my final thought on the quarterback is it's going to work out. So just, let the process play out at this point.
Yeah. Talking to the offensive line, I believe it was this week. All of the weeks are running together now. All of the days are turning into one. But just coming away from that, feeling that this is a group that believes in themselves. It's a very confident offensive line group. Josh Simmons at left tackle, Josh Fryer at right tackle. I think things are falling into place, and Carson Hinsman trying to fight off Vic Cutler at this point. And I think the things are set now in terms of at least 4 of the 5, and albeit we'll see if Victor Cutler can close the gap and go past Carson Hinsman. But I think right now it's going to be Simmons at left tackle, Donovan Jackson at left guard. I guess I'll say Hinsman at center until proven otherwise, because every time I've seen him, he's been with the ones. And Matt Jones at right guard and Josh Fryer at right tackle. And talking to Fryer this past week, I asked him, you spent your entire spring at left tackle, and this summer was thinking you're going to be left tackle, and your first week of fall camp is at left tackle. And so what goes through your mind when you're told you're going to move to right tackle? And first of all, he has no problem moving around. That's what his entire Ohio State career has been. So he's accustomed to that. But he told me during the summer, he was hoping they'd move him. Like he was wanting to be moved to right tackle basically. So when they said, hey, we're going to move you over to right tackle, he was fine with that. And that's the place where I think he's more comfortable there. I think he's better suited for that. You combine him at right tackle with the kind of athleticism that they're talking about with Josh Simmons at left tackle. I think that makes more sense for what they've got. And we'll see how Josh Simmons plays, but just imagine them not having him at this point. You might be seeing like Luke Montgomery, a true freshman, starting at left or right tackle for the Buckeyes this year. And that would be great for the future. I don't know how good that would be for Ohio State right now, having a true freshman on the offensive line. They've done it in the past, and it's a rare individual who can. I think Luke Montgomery is a rare individual, but right now they're so much deeper and more experienced with Simmons in the lineup.
Does this offensive line realize that people are doubting them, that they're a question mark, that they're considered the wild card or the unit that needs to be figured out for this team to reach its goals?
I'm sorry, I blipped out there. I didn't hear the question. What was it again?
Yeah, basically, do these guys up front on the offensive line realize that people are considering them the question mark, the unit that needs to be figured out for this team to reach its goals, that they're kind of on the spot?
Yeah, I did a story on Enoch Vamahi, who's kind of ticketed right now as a backup. Back in the spring, Justin Fry was lamenting the fact that he needs to get Enoch Vamahi a starting spot somewhere, but doesn't really have one for him. And he's like in his 4th year at Ohio State. And, you'd say the moving sidewalk is ending, please look down. But he's been a great soldier, through all this and been there, in case they've ever needed him. And he has been pressed into service in some key moments here and there, but not a lot. And he said that they do the best that they can to tune out the outside noise and just listen to the coaches on what they have to do on a day in and day out basis to get better. And he said that by doing that, it really kind of gives you that inner peace to know that everything that people are talking about outside those walls really isn't a factor. I mean, you improve, you get better, you put your own destiny in your own hands, and that's kind of how they've attacked it. And he's a veteran guy who's talked about that. I posted the interview with Enoch Vamahi on our site, and he is from Hawaii, about 100 miles from Maui, where they've had the wildfires, and over 100 people, have been lost their lives, and millions of dollars in devastation there. And he did put out a plea for people to go to the Red Cross site and donate to that cause, which I would reiterate as well here. But, his thought back on the offensive line was that they've tuned out all the outside noise. They know it's out there. I mean, it's hard to escape it, but their way to approach that is to tune it out and go to work. And from what I've seen, that's been an effective way to look at it.
Yeah, I don't remember which of the linemen I asked. It may have been Josh Fryer, but asking him about how you guys are viewed as the question mark, basically in the entire team. And this is a team that has defensive question marks coming back from last year. But the answers that I would get were basically just watch, just wait, you'll see, that sort of thing. The confidence that they have right now is really high. It's also the same kind of confidence that the defense has. So maybe, I don't know, is it all just player speak and coach speak? I don't think all of it is. I think there is an air of confidence going around there, and they know that they're the question mark, and they can do the math, 3 new starters. And so, yeah, they've got to get together. And that's why, you get this offensive line set after Saturday. And now those 5 players all stick together and play together and gel as an offensive line. And Mika Hanna asking any news on George Fitzpatrick. He's like the number 3 left tackle right now. You've got Zen Michalski in the mix, and with the 3s as well. And Miles Walker, the true freshman, and the 3s or the 4s. That's how deep they are right now. So Zen Michalski, the number 1 right tackle coming out of spring, is now essentially the number 3 right tackle in fall camp.
You've got another offensive line question coming in from Chad. Does having Donovan Jackson next to Jimmy Simmons give Fry more confidence in moving him over?
No question. And Josh Simmons basically said that, Jimmy Simmons, he basically said that Donovan Jackson is a great resource for him. Donovan Jackson has started 1 season and was also the 6th offensive lineman as a true freshman back in 2021, national top 50 player out of Texas. And he's lived up to the billing, much as Paris Johnson did before him as the 5-star blue chip offensive line recruit. And I think you're going to see Donovan Jackson push for some All-American honors and potentially, I don't know that guards typically get drafted in the first round, but if they do, maybe late first round or second round, whatever. If you're a great player, they'll find you type thing. And he sounds like he takes care of his business. And I think that helps Simmons a great deal at left tackle to have a guy who has been there and played well in the big games to lean on. So I think no question Justin Fry likes that pairing on the left side. That's their best left side pairing. And those guys are going to clean a lot of people's behinds, I think. As one of my old buddies used to say, that was one of his favorite terms when an offensive line was really getting the job done this coming season.
Yakov showing up to let us know that if Ohio State wins the title, Mark and Steve should get mohawks. My
hair grows back in about 3 weeks, so why not? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess my initial thought is that if I should get a mohawk, I don't know what that has to do with Ohio State winning a national championship. I should either get a mohawk or I shouldn't get a mohawk.
Yeah.
If you're leaving this up to some kind of betting scenario here, Yakov, then certainly what's the payoff? I got to know what the payoff is on the other side.
Yeah.
Ohio State doesn't win a national championship. Does the entire community here pony up $1 million or something?
Yeah.
No, I think if Ohio State wins, you get the mohawk this way. If they lose, you get it this way.
Ooh.
It's different.
I'm old enough
different
to remember the Road Warriors had the combined haircut. One of them had their hair here, and the other one had their hair here. So yeah, maybe that's what we'll do.
First show with face paint and everything.
Face paint. You have to be scarlet and gray face paint.
Yeah, if you get the grassroots effort going on that one, and we'll talk later on that one. Appreciate you being here. We've got at least $2 in the can to get that done. I don't know what a mohawk costs these days.
Just do it yourself. It's free.
I haven't priced those. Yeah. I'm sure it's simple. Again, I'm not seeing the benefit for me. I gotta see the payoff for me. All right, folks, appreciate you being here. Buckeyes Live. Let me throw this one out. This kind of playing off of the AP poll, which was just a slight detour from the coaches poll. Ohio State up a notch ahead of Alabama at number 3 with a couple first place votes from the media. And of course, Georgia won, Michigan 2. You got to go back.
I had one first place vote, I think, in the AP poll. It was from a writer in Texas. Okay. I don't recall his name. I joked that my two of my better friends on the beat, Kyle Rowland and David Briggs, work for the Toledo Blade, and one of them may or may not have an AP poll vote because they cover Toledo and Bowling Green pretty closely up there. And I joked that, that one of them had to have put the Buckeyes number 1 on their ballot, because they're both OSU grads. And then we got on the website and we saw it was a guy from Texas, and he had Toledo coincidentally at number 25. So that guy, he deserves a lot of credit for repping the state of Ohio with his AP poll vote. It is interesting. If it falls that way, it would be Georgia versus Alabama, presumably in the Sugar Bowl, and a Rose Bowl of Ohio State versus Michigan. How cool would that be? So I guess we can all root for that. Kind of an SEC Big Ten lockout, portend of the future. I did a radio show this morning on Portland, Oregon radio. They asked me, what do you think about Oregon and Washington joining the Big Ten? I said, well, I'm 55 years old. I'm not averse to change, but this is a whole hell of a lot of change. You talk about now being in conference with schools on the West Coast and playing in an 18-team conference where there's no way everybody could play each other. Like, what does it even mean to be a Big Ten champion? You could have 3 teams tie for first place at 9-0, and you're telling one of those teams, on that fateful Saturday evening at 8 p.m. that, sorry, bro, you didn't make it. You're not going to Indianapolis or wherever they're having the championship game this year. You're still in the 12-team playoff probably, but you're not going to be a Big Ten champion. And it just it doesn't make any sense. I know Kevin had a long-winded explanation for it on the show 2 weeks ago. And I just kind of came around to the fact that they've eliminated the Pac-12. The SEC and the Big Ten are already squawking about having 6 automatic berths. That's too many. It's too many. Can't have that. And, there'll be no Pac-12 in 2 years. So I don't know what they're going to do, regarding those automatic berths. And really this was what this was all about, was to cut down the number of automatic berths to make sure that 4 Big Ten teams and 4 SEC teams make the playoff every year, or at minimum 3. And I guess somebody will have to show me the math on that. Like why this was so important that they did that, and kind of changed the course of college football, for the rest of time because of it.
Well, I mean, the Big Ten didn't force anybody's hand. It's the lack of leadership in the Pac-12 is what doomed them from the previous administration to the current administration holding out, saying no to the same money that was offered to the Big 12, and everybody is lauding the Big 12 for saving themselves and for securing their financial future. And the Pac-12 could have done that before then, and George Kliavkoff said no. And so the leadership there has kind of forced, I guess, everybody's hands. But yeah, I still think with the scheduling of the 18 teams, I think you can still do one protected rival, and then you go through it's like the 1-8-8 plan, basically, where you have one protected rival, you play 8 teams home and away the next 2 years, and then the other 8 the next 2 years. So you would still be able to get everybody to each campus within a 4-year period. So I'm wondering if that's what they will do. But it's a very big thing. It is something we're all going to have to get used to, and the regionality of it, I think, will eventually come back once we are all into a super conference, and then you can go back to being regional. And we're going to break everything down and tear down all of these walls before we can start putting them back up, when it's just a higher level, a more exclusive club of FBS, Power 5, whatever it is. And then we can get back to a Big Ten, a Pacific 8, whatever, where that's when you can get back to, now we play these 7 regional teams, and then also 2 of these teams and 2 of these teams. And what does that do for the group of 5 or whatever is remaining? Go have your own national championship. Also try to get into the, I don't know if they're going to have an opportunity to get into the playoffs once there's a separation, probably not. And hopefully there's TV money left over for the group of leftovers at that point. But I'm okay with them revisiting this current playoff thing in terms of the automatic qualifiers, because there's no Pac-12 anymore. So that has to happen. Now, in terms of the number of automatic qualifiers, I'd like to see more people have opportunity to get in. Like I'm fine with, the top 3 group of 5 or whatever, what have you. Like if you're going to expand it, let some other people in. And if the 9th or the 10th ranked Power 5 school is upset that they didn't get in the playoffs, okay, that's great, because that keeps the regular season even more important for those teams that missed out. And it's like, gosh, we were so close. And it turns out that third loss did keep you out of it.
Yeah. Where was I going to go with this? So in terms of the playoff, yeah, I just think that we're headed toward what you're talking about, Tony, in regards to we have nationalized all these conferences, but then they'll be so large they have to break down into subcategories that will once again regionalize the sport. In regards to where I was headed with this poll vote, and again, if we see the top 4 eventually make the playoff, then that will be a first ever, certainly in these 9 years, and that'll be a first ever of all time that the top 4 will finish the top 4. So there will be other teams in the playoffs, most likely, unless this is a historic year of AP voting accuracy. So, number 1, Georgia, I have no issue with them being number 1. I don't have any issue with Ball State being number 1 or, Kansas State being number 1. People can vote for whatever they want. Nobody's played a game. So it really doesn't matter to me who's number 1 and who's number 25. There are all sorts of different theories as to why teams should be placed where they are and what's justified. I don't think any of it's justified, because it's all just based on reasonable opinion, based on how good these teams are or were last year and what the projection should be to this year. I think we should keep in mind that there's not been a team win a national championship 3 consecutive years until I think going back to the 1930s. I think it was Minnesota back in the mid 30s that won 3 consecutive national championships. So from a probability standpoint, the odds are against Georgia. However, I get the number 1 vote. They are the 2-time defending national champions. They've proven that they can lose half their team to the NFL and still win another national championship. They do have an easy schedule that is pretty much going to give them entry into the playoff without breaking a sweat, first and foremost. So once you make the playoff, you're 1 of 4. So I get all the number 1 votes for Georgia. On the other hand, I think it's easy to see that, boy, with a couple breaks not going their way the last 2 years, one against Alabama being a couple wide receivers not in the game against them, Jamison Williams and John Mechie, and then the Marvin Harrison situation and a myriad of other things connected to that. They may not be the national champions. I know Georgia fans don't want to hear that, but I'm not trying to take away your national championships, but you were quite fortunate in both scenarios. The other thing, though, is can you guys think of the last time that going into a season in the Big Ten, certainly Ohio State has not won every Big Ten championship, but certainly since Urban Meyer stepped on campus, they have been considered the best team. And basically by season's end, even if they didn't win the Big Ten, it was like, okay, they were the best team in the Big Ten. They had to eliminate themselves, basically. And then even before that, do you go back to 2005 in Penn State or 2008 in Penn State, where another team in the Big Ten was better than them? Is this the first time that we can go into a season reasonably thinking that somebody else in the Big Ten is better than them, or even if they're not, that the gap is closer than it's been in almost 20 years?
Well, 2011, the Fickle year, they had all those suspensions. That was an outlier. And then back to that, 2004, they weren't any good at all. So, but after that, they went on this string where whatever it is in the last 18 years, they probably won 10, 12, 13 Big Ten championships, whatever the exact number is. So, I think it's them and Michigan and then everybody else. Well, Penn State is kind of like one, and then 1A probably. I don't want to say that either Ohio State or Michigan's 1A because they're like both number one. But then Penn State is right there, 1B, and then there's nobody else within arm's length of those three, in my opinion. So take it however you want, I guess. But and I think that's, we'll see if USC can sustain some things. I think that having the ability for them to play 3 games on the West Coast every year, or which under that scenario that Tony said is not likely to happen, 1-8-8, you'd only play a maximum of 2 games probably per year in your own time zone. How are they going to ever compete, for this thing? I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I do think that those 3 teams are head and shoulders above the rest. So if somebody else crashes that party, it'd be a tremendous job by Wisconsin with Luke Fickell, or Nebraska with Matt Rule in his first season. Find some way to do something. I don't see it at Iowa. There's nobody else in the East that's on this level. I mean, Maryland's got the quarterback, but what else do they really have? I don't know. And they're certainly not going to beat all 3 of those other teams. So I don't know. It's I don't know. I think it's the big 3 and the little whatever the rest is, 11.
I'm looking because immediately I went to the 2011 and the 2004 seasons as well in terms of Ohio State not being all that. But in 2004, they were the preseason number 9 team. Michigan was preseason number 8. 2011, they were preseason 18, which was, both Michigan and Penn State were unranked. That in 2011, I didn't look to see, where Michigan State or Wisconsin or any of those were. So even in the bad years, Ohio State was probably was looked at as, if not the favorite, then one of the 2 favorites. And I think this year they're looked at as one of the 2 favorites. But it is a new thing to where the expectation, and you see it from all over the media, national college football media, Big Ten football media, where the expectation is that Michigan is going to win the Big Ten and Ohio State isn't. And I think that's a logical thing based on the last 2 years and the game being in Ann Arbor this year. I wonder what the thought process would be if the game was in Columbus this year, if it would mirror Ohio State being the favorite like they were last year, which And even then, it's like I just assumed they were the heavy favorite last year. I think we would remember if Michigan was the favorite last year, because we're talking about it now like it's some kind of odd thing. So I'm guessing there would have been some talk about it last year as well. But yeah, that's the world we're living in right now, and Ohio State fans lose sleep because of it.
Yeah, I believe they were a touchdown favorite going into the game, and I think they were a touchdown favorite when the season started, as projected, before anyone played anything. And that's what the perceived difference between the two teams was. Has anyone ever done any analysis? And I've got the score of, as you guys do, of every Ohio State-Michigan game in my head and understand what the records were going into the game and understand where the teams were generally perceived to start the season. Is there a real home field advantage in that game? And you can't just go, okay, Ohio State's record is this at home against Michigan, and Michigan's record is, you got to compare, okay, how good were the teams? The throwaways or the trestle, a lot of the trestle years where, okay, they're going to win the game by 3 touchdowns wherever they play. It doesn't matter. Throw those games away. When you look at there being comparable teams, whether good, marginal, or bad, has home field actually proven to be anything?
I'll go ahead, Steve. You're muted.
You're muted, Steve.
I'm sorry. That's a good question, because to my recollection, in recent years, the better team has ultimately won the game. And, there haven't been many upsets, really, when you stop and think about it. The team that's favored on the point spread, other than Ohio State, maybe the last 2 years they might have been favored. I don't know, but only by a slight amount, not a double digit, type thing. I don't know. And when the better team wins, it doesn't matter where the game's played, So I don't know. I don't know how you look at that, but what do you think, Tony? I think it matters to a point, but when you get into the second half, as we've seen the last 2 games, it comes down to who can dictate what's happening in the trenches. It doesn't matter what the sound of the stadium is, whether it's blowing or snowing. If you can line up and blow the other team off the ball with your offensive line, and then get into the backfield and make plays with your defensive line, you're going to win the game. And Michigan has dominated Ohio State up front, both sides of the ball, in the second half of the last 2 games. And that was that. I mean, game, set, match, good luck to you. That was it. So it wouldn't matter if they played the game on the, anywhere in the world. It came down to execution and who was the more physical team. And Michigan had that in spades.
Yeah, the team that wins the rushing battle wins the game. And like
Typically.
you said, just I've looked up, because we would write about this every year in terms of like the team with the better yard per carry average generally wins, and almost always, like, generally is not general enough of a broad sweeping generalization. I have a tweet here from November of 2018. The last time Ohio State beat Michigan while being outrushed by the Wolverines was 1994. The team that wins the rushing battle has won the last 18 games. That was in 2018. I don't think anything has changed over the last 4 games. And you can count on perhaps one finger the times that the team that wins has been outrushed in the last 30 years of this game, maybe even the last 40 years going back. And that's a study that, yes, I should have done it by now. Mark, thank you for bringing it up. But summer is over. The college football season is here. This is not June any longer. But that is one where the math is really easy to do on that. And it doesn't matter if if you play the game in a parking lot, at Michigan Stadium, at Ohio Stadium. For one, Michigan Stadium isn't that loud. And for 2, if you're running on Ohio Stadium, running the ball on the Buckeyes in Ohio Stadium, that place gets really quiet. And so it's the best way to take the crowd out of it. And, if you're running the ball and the frustration of the moving chains, and it's the fans get bothered by it, and it's just the frustration aspect of it if you can run the ball, you can shut anybody up.
Well, Tony, you've disappointed me because for all the times that I bring up some kind of odd, strange statistic that I would like to have compiled, I think you're down to like 93% of the time that you've delivered that. So your rate has gone down. I've just scanned the last 20 years, or basically since the start of the century. You guys, this is obviously inexact science, to be sure. Here are the years that I believe that these teams are fairly equal: 2001, 2002, 3, 5, 6, 15, 16, 18, 21, 22. The home teams 6 and 4.
There you go. That'll tell you.
Again, this is
people ask me
inexact.
what this season is going to come down to, and I'm going to say it again. The second half of the Michigan game in Ann Arbor, Michigan, does Ohio State establish the run and stop Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, and not necessarily stop them, but contain them, not allow them to rip off the 20 and 30-yard runs to change field position, not allow them to sustain drives and put it into the red zone where anything can happen. You get the ball in the red zone, now anything can happen. If the ball's at the 50-yard line, Michigan, here you go, guys, good luck. But when they are able to drive it into the red zone, now anything can happen. So Ohio State has got to line up and consistently contain the run game by Michigan. And that's what it's going to come down to. And that's just, as Tony said, that's just time and memoriam. That's how it is.
Although I thought they did a great job of stopping Blake Corum last year.
Not the year before, not with Hassan Haskins and Corum the year before. Good Lord.
Boy.
That was thunder and lightning, wasn't it? Wow. On a snowy day, we had thunder and lightning in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
We had our guy John play a simulation over on our Michigan channel, and it was snowing. I don't watch those simulations. I don't care about them. People comment to me about them, and I even forget that we've got to post it. I'm like, yeah, I don't post them. I think they're the stupidest, silliest things imaginable. But I did notice, since he had a premiere going, that okay, yeah, it's snowing in Ann Arbor, and Ohio State was up like 24-8 in the third quarter with the snow coming down.
Did he
Global
hit reset?
warming has affected everywhere except Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Probably Champaign.
It's Champaign, Illinois. Well, yeah, my God. And whatever that was at Northwestern last year. Maybe that's an example of global warming, the 60-mile-per-hour winds and sideways rain.
Tony, you should comb through these. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just looking through the comments, and I was wondering when we were going to start to see the narrative that Ryan Day is going to choose Kyle McCord out of favoritism to the more experienced upperclassmen, and I have to reiterate that's not how they're going to do the quarterback situation. I don't think that's how they do anything. They're going to put the players that they trust most out there, and quite often that is the most experienced, the oldest player. But you're going to go with a quarterback that gives you the best opportunity to win, especially opening on the road in the Big Ten. Yeah, it's Indiana, that's fine. But I've seen Ohio State struggle there before to open the season. And so they're going to go in with their best option at quarterback. And whether that's Devin Brown or whether that's Kyle McCord, it's not going to be out of some favoritism or he's more experienced. He's thrown 58 passes in his career. Whoever starts against Indiana is going to throw half of that, So the amount of experience that Kyle McCord has had, Devin Brown has had now over a year to catch up to that. And so I don't see this being something that, Kyle McCord's start against Akron, I don't really think impacts the situation that much. It hasn't been so much that Devin Brown couldn't catch up. So I don't think they're going to throw him out there just because, it's just safer this way. They're looking for the best player, and that's who they're going to put out there.
And I don't think they're going to play McCord either as a way to appease Marvin Harrison Jr., their standout wide receiver, as his former high school teammate there at Philadelphia St. Joe's. I think that they're going to play the best guy. The predominant number of snaps are going to go to the best guy, and whether that's Kyle McCord or Devin Brown, I guess we'll wait and see what comes out of this weekend. But it seems to me that Brown, as I said earlier, has kind of closed that gap just a little bit, but I don't take that to mean that McCord has faltered necessarily. I just take it to mean that Brown's worked his way up. So let's let the process play out. That's what the coaches get paid the big bucks for. There's a lot of people with a lot riding on this. Brian Hartline, first year as an offensive coordinator, he's going to get this right. He's got to get this right. This is his coaching career kind of hanging in the balance here. How he does in this first 1 or 2 years as an offensive coordinator at Ohio State is what's going to set him up for the rest of his coaching career, and he needs to have success. And then there's so many of these guys, that are 4 or 5 of them predicted in the first round of the NFL draft. They have to have great seasons to be able to go off and realize those high draft picks and everything that goes with that. So a lot of people in a contract year, so to speak, and a lot of people have a lot riding on this.
When will you guys make predictions on this season? Or have you?
I haven't done my column yet. I'm leaning toward 13-0. I've got them number 2 in my poll, just on the basis of talent. I just think that they've got more talent than anybody, maybe even as much or more than Georgia. Georgia's just got that pedigree, that they've been on the field and they've proven it. And they've got enough guys back that you're saying they've still got the shell of the championship team. That isn't to say that the off the field stuff with the deaths and the different things that have happened there and the guys they lost to the NFL, sometimes over history, we've seen that those things will take you down a peg. But as of right now, and the schedule they're playing is, so easy that they're going to get to 12-0, walking backwards basically. So, and they walked backwards in a lot of their games last year. We got down to Atlanta and the Georgia media were like, they sucked, for a good part of the season. They definitely had games they were dominant. We saw them, just the Tennessee game was pretty cool. I thought that they just dismantled one of the hottest teams in college football. But otherwise, the LSU game in the championship, their defense was non-existent. So, and at times Bennett wasn't very good either in some of the midseason games either. So they put 13 games, out there and weren't necessarily 100% dominant, all season long. But, as it turned out, they were the best team in the country, and that's all that mattered. As John Cooper used to say, when you're in the woods with your buddy and the bear pops up, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just got to outrun you. So there you go.
That trip to Wisconsin, a night game, Halloween weekend, still stands out to me. And Ohio State is the more talented team, but I've seen the number 1 ranked team lose in that stadium to the Badgers before. So I think that's that one. And obviously the road game at Michigan, I feel like you should win all of your games at home. And so that would make Penn State a win. But, with the toss-up games that they have, as Ryan Day says, when the talent is equated, they've not done fantastically well over the last couple of years when talent is equated. So I have not made any predictions yet. I can see we talked about this on Buckeye Weekly, where like 11-1 is more likely than 12-0, but is 12-0 more likely than 10-2?
Good way to put it.
Yeah, you wonder if when they put the Big Ten schedule together, and I know that there's just the rotation and it's all systematic, that somebody looks at that and says, okay, these are the 2 prime competitors for the conference championship, and one of them goes to Wisconsin, and then also we don't have any power or authority over this, but one of them also, that same team scheduled Notre Dame on the road. Therefore, there's no comparison between the 2 schedules.
Well, and really that road game at Notre Dame, however it goes for Ohio State, is going to give them credit with the committee. And Michigan and Michigan not having that non-conference game, if they lose to Ohio State and that's their only loss, that might be enough to keep them out depending on what else happens. Ohio State losing that game last year, they got in because of the Notre Dame win, essentially. And so not having that help of the non-conference, Michigan may have to run the table in order to make the playoffs.
And then just to follow up on the quarterback situation, do we believe in any way that Ryan Day knows who that guy's going to be, and therefore he feels confident that I'll just let the last few days play out and just confirm what I already know, and then I'll make the announcement? Or it's more about, I want the deadline to be this because I want to give that quarterback 70% of the snaps. I want this team to know who their leader is. I want to go into this season fully assured, and therefore I'm setting my own deadline to make a decision regardless of how close it is.
Steve, what did you make of, because we'll answer this question, but Steve, what did you make of when Day was asked, if you had to make an announcement this week, could you? And Day said, yeah, I probably could, but then it's still wide open.
Yeah. He made the comment that sometimes you go to bed at night and you're laying in bed and you're thinking this is how it's going to be. And then you wake up the next day or whatever, and you have a different thought. But I mean, if they have to put somebody on the field, they will. I mean, it's not, this isn't life or death here. This is just, a starting point. And, it's not important who starts the game. It's most important who finishes it. It's not important who starts the season. It's going to be most important who's there when they play Michigan and Alabama and Georgia or whoever it ends up at the end. So to me, again, I just reiterate, this is not something I'm personally losing any sleep over. There are more pressing issues with this team, I think, than who's going to play quarterback. Is the person untested? Yeah, so be it. But so were Fields and Stroud, although we had an idea that they were both going to be pretty good. So, yeah, that was very telling. I thought that, I could put somebody out there. Sure. Again, I'm going to be surprised if it's not Kyle McCord. It would be like an utter shock to me if it isn't. And if it isn't, then that tells you that Devin Brown's one hell of a player. I'll just put it that way.
Really good stuff out of these guys once again here at the Voice of College Football. Again, we don't know when we're going to be live each week. It depends on our scheduling. Therefore, it's important for you guys to subscribe to the channel.
We might be back Wednesday next week because we won't have interviews during the day. Maybe. And because they'll start class next Wednesday, I think, is the first day of class. And they move practice to 3:30 or 4:30 in the afternoon, and we get players at 6:30. If we have interviews next Wednesday, it would be after practice. And then we're into game week after that. And each Wednesday we have interviews at 6:30. So we haven't talked about it internally, but 11 Wednesday has been kind of our default time, and that may be the best time. I don't know.
This is what happens behind the scenes, folks. Steve pulls us together. He sounds out the call to say, this is go time, everyone. And then we all follow suit. There we go.
We got to get Big Kev back on here.
Absolutely, we do.
For his wit and wisdom.
We can let him.
Hey, high school football in Ohio tonight. There's games all over the state. And Aaron Noland, the verbal commitment for 2024, I think his team's playing on ESPN2 at 6 p.m. tonight. So that's something everybody can check out. I believe that's tonight. Are you aware of that, Tony?
Aaron Noland? That is against Juju Lewis, their top target in 2026. So
wow,
two really good quarterbacks there. Juju Lewis, like a starter since his freshman year, like crazy 4,000 yard passer, and both of these guys are 4,000 yard passers. So check that out at 6 p.m. I will be in Bell Fountain checking out Tavian St. Clair.
Yeah, they're playing Sydney, and St. Clair is the 2025 quarterback. I know that the running back, Sam Williams-Dixon, Pickerington North, they're playing at Cincinnati Elder, which will be a very difficult assignment for them. Trying to think off the top of my head if we know of any other matchups off the top of my head. Springfield, who are they opening up with? Any idea?
I don't know offhand. I think Kevin is going to be at Big Walnut checking out Garrett Stover.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of stuff in Canton tomorrow as well.
Yeah. There's all kinds of stuff. You just have to be looking for it.
Good stuff. What do we need to look for on Bucknuts, Steve?
Well, we've got all these interviews in the can, and so I wrote one today about Mitchell Melton, who missed the 2022 season, defensive end. He was a linebacker previously, and now 6'3", 253 pounds. He is a fourth-year junior from Silver Spring, Maryland, and really has never had a chance to get on the field. Was kind of in the mix last spring in 2022, suffered a torn ACL in the spring game that year and was lost for the season. And now he is healthy and he is back. And I think as of right now, if you had to rank your defensive ends, it's Tui Maloau, Sawyer, and Kenyatta Jackson, 2-3 or 3-2, however you want to rank them. And then Caden Curry and Mitchell Melton probably right there at 4 or 5. I could be missing somebody, but those seem to be the 5 that kind of have stood out. And in the limited scrimmages that I've seen, Mitchell Melton's been a fixture in the backfield, number 17. He just gives people a lot of fits. With his speed rush, he's only 253 pounds, so a 320-pound tackle can neutralize him if he gets his hands into him. But I think Melton is a guy I wrote about today that is interesting. We've got a story about Tyleek Williams on our site, defensive tackle. He tweaked what appeared to be a knee injury first day of practice, probably stepped. They were practicing on the grass fields. He may have stepped in a hole or something, who knows, on the grass fields. They practiced a lot of the first week and a half on the grass fields, probably because they thought it was going to be too hot to be on the field turf. But so he missed at least the first week or so. He declares himself full go, and he's back practicing now, which is huge because he's very important in that defensive tackle rotation. Taiwan Malone from Ole Miss. One of us is going to do a story about him at some point. Looks like he's in the 2 deep at defensive tackle as well. So, that defensive line's got to come through. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Mitchell Melton, I believe has played in one game in his career. It was the first game of the 2020 season and hasn't been on the field since. And
Wow.
So that's a guy that obviously everybody should be rooting for. Me, I could plug myself now. Mark, is that what we're doing?
It's that time.
I wrote about Jordan Hancock today and also Jack Sawyer, so you can find that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. I wrote a little bit about Travion Henderson and the offensive line coming together, the left and right tackle yesterday, so you can find that there. And then check out BuckeyeHuddle.com throughout the weekend for a whole bunch of stuff from the high school recruits.
Folks, I know you all hate the SEC, but we got a new SEC channel. We'll put actually the link is down in the description section, so please subscribe over there. There's a number of reasons why we did that, but a lot of good content there. Follow Tony, follow Steve, of course. Guys, we appreciate it, and we will catch up next week. Steve says Wednesday, everyone. We should be here then, so see you then.